Wow. Trails in the Sky second chapter might have just become one of my favorite JRPGs. Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to the TRG YouTube channel. If you missed my review of the first Trails in the Sky game, click the card in the corner somewhere up here in one of the corners to see what I thought of that game. But I'm going to get this out of the way right out of the gate. Trails in the Sky second chapter definitely proved to me one thing. I was wrong about Trails in the Sky. Now, as I wrapped credits on the game after 52 hours, I found a new game to place on my mantle of favorite JRPGs of all time. And before I go any further, it's nearly impossible to talk about this game without getting into spoilers and character developments and things like that. So if you have not played Trails in the Sky second chapter, this is your opportunity to really just not continue watching the video, because like I said, I'm gonna talk about spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this video. Now, my review of the first game, I mentioned that Trails in the Sky first chapter was a game that moved at a very glacial pace. It was slow, it was plodding, and it was kind of clunky at times. Well, Trails in the Sky second chapter is not like that at all. This is a game whose plot is like the Indianapolis 500 that somehow broke out of the raceway and onto the streets where Dominic Toretto is helping save the world from some kind of crazy disaster. It's not really like Fast and the Furious, but I guess the pacing of it feels like it. Now, Trails in the Sky second chapter takes place moments after the previous game ended and then jumps forward a few months to where we find Estelle is continuing her training as a bracer while trying to deal with the fact that Joshua just up and left at the end of the first game. And so she's wrestling with a lot of these emotions and just pain from that loss. Joshua isn't exactly dead, but Estelle feels like she has lost someone to that degree. And what's interesting about the opening of this game is that you really feel the weight of that. The game takes a very heavy tone at the outset to where it tells you, like, this is going to be a hard journey. To a degree, it's going to be more difficult than the first game from the emotional side of things. And at the end of the first game, you find out that Joshua was actually a member of Ouroboros, who was actually an assassin trained from a young age to basically infiltrate places and kill people and take people down, which is really dark when you think about it. And so Joshua is wrestling with that as well, that he has murdered people, and he's trying to come to grips with that and wonder really if he can even be redeemed, if he even deserves love. And so right out of the gate, it's all these heavy themes, and you see these characters are conflicted, and it's like, man, this is really gonna go some places. But I will mention that just hearing Ouroboros a lot made me think of Wesker from Resident Evil 5 every time that he would say Ouroboros or whatever. It was just, this really has nothing to do with my review. It's just a funny little thing that kept popping into my mind whenever Weissman showed up, or anytime Ouroboros was mentioned, all I could think of was Wesker.
Save it, Wesker. There's no one left to help you now.
I don't need anyone else. I have Ouroboros.
Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of the review, this game is like the Indy 500. The plot is just, from the start of the game, is go, 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 go. There's almost no time to really catch your breath as you play through the story, because things hit the fan quickly at the start, and then they just continue to pelt the fan to the point where the fan breaks and things just go crazy inside the room. So like I said, at the start of the game, you pick up off the events from the first game, but then it jumps forward. I guess you can flip forward in time too, who cares? Jumps forward in time to Estelle training with Annalise, with Kurt, in a remote mountain region where the bracers usually go there to begin the next step of their training to become just more stronger. And now that I'm bringing that up, I want to point this out too. Something I really liked about this game was how when I started the game, it automatically detected a save file from the first game game and said, hey, would you like to load this in? I was like, yeah, sure, that'd be awesome. And when I started the game, my character was already the previous level, or all the characters really were the previous levels that they were at the end of the first game, and it carried over a lot of their moves and things like that, and then they just continued to develop those in the game. I really enjoyed that because you play games like Metroid, right, where you will start the sequel and you start playing through the game, you lose all your powers, you lose all your upgrades, and so you're essentially having to replay or repeat a lot of the steps that you did in the previous game, and it's fine for the most part, like it's fine as a gameplay loop, but it's kind of annoying at the same time because it's like you've already gone through these experiences, your character should be this high level that you were at the end of the first game, and so I like that in Trails of the Sky. It just continued that with the second game. It's kind of similar to Mass Effect, even how it even carries over your choices and the things that you did in the first game to the second game, but I'll get more into that a little bit later. And so as Estelle is training, as Estelle and Annalise are training, they wind up through a series of events stumbling upon Ouroboros is active and they're carrying out their plan to revive or bring about the Oriole, which I think I'm saying correctly. I wound up calling it the Oreo at one point in the game because I was like, I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm gonna call it the Oreo. Looks nothing like an Oreo, but it's the Oreo nonetheless. But that's basically serves as the momentum, the stuff to kind of get you going through the game to get started. The game basically has you revisiting a lot of the areas that you visited in the first game, but now you're on the trail of Ouroboros because they're testing out these different gospel weapons that are causing these really weird disturbances in the different towns that you visited before, and along the way, you regroup with some of your other characters while also meeting some new characters like Kevin, which, by the way, Father Kevin is my favorite character in this game. One of my favorite characters, at least. He is literally Vash the Stampede from Trigun. So anytime that you bring in a character that's like Vash the Stampede from one of my favorite animes, I'm in, dude. Kevin was a great character. He was a great addition. Loved having him around, and I was always wishing I could get more time with him because he was just a really cool character. Now, as you go to the different regions, you're encountering these different enforcers who are like the main heads of Ouroboros, the super powerful elite characters or warriors in this organization. And what I noticed real quick about the enforcers is that they're a very eclectic bunch. They're not exactly the same in a lot of ways. You have a character who has a taste for the theatrical and uses magic like Blue Blanc, who is the Phantom Thief, which made me think of Persona 5 a lot. Anytime he was around, I was like, I see the mask, it makes me think of Persona. Loved it. Then you also have a character who's more cool but kind of scary, and Walter, who's this martial artist who has a history with Zen, which is interesting to explore and learn about. But you also have the nightmarishly cute Ren, who you wouldn't think is part of Ouroboros, but man, that was one heck of a twist when she shows up with her scythe and shows up with her mech, the Mater Potter, or Pater Mater, I can't remember what order it is. This giant fearsome mech that she sees as her family, essentially her parents, which is really dark and really deep. And like I said, Trails in the Sky second chapter goes deep with some of these themes in the character development. It is really good stuff. But apart from Ren, you have this character who's more seductive but also deadly in Luciola, I think it's a Luciola, I'm pretty sure, who has a history with Sierra when Sierra was part of the circus, or the kind of traveling circus where Estelle's father, Cassius Bright, found her. And these characters all have their own interesting stories. Even Leonhardt, you get more time with him and learning more about him and his ties with Joshua and how they're actually connected and almost like brothers. Seeing these characters come into play was both thrilling and it was also interesting at the same time, because when you see them interact with the characters that they have history with, man, it really pulls on the heartstrings and it really makes you go, what exactly happened between Zen and Walter? Why does Sarah and Luciola feel like sisters, but they're torn apart by something? What happened exactly? You know, and then why is it that Blue Blanc is just the way that he is? You know, it was cool. Like, I really appreciated this. You know, normally when you make a sophomore type thing, whether it's an album or story or whatever it is, it tends to go into a sophomore slump. But if anything, I feel like Trails in the Sky second chapter, when they added more characters in, they were all compelling and fascinating and interesting. And even the enforcer, what's his name, the Fool or LeFou or something like that, even he was interesting. He's so mysterious. It's like, is he actually the one pulling the strings? Is Weissman actually in control? Who knows, but I'm gonna keep playing this game to find out. And that's something that I really enjoyed about the game, was the attention to detail. Again, it is at an all-time high in this game. It was really good in Trails in the Sky first chapter with a lot of different things and the characters and the NPCs, but this game, there's so much more to the game because the game is substantially longer, but part of that is because of the characters and what they bring to the table and how it really fleshes out the side stories in this game. So much so to the point that I actually really appreciated how that Falcom managed to maintain this thread of connection between these characters, that at the end of the game, each time you fight an enforcer, if you bring that character along with you that has a connection with them, it fleshes out their story even more and gives you even more dialogue, so you learn more about what happened to them. And plus, you get some extra cutscenes like this fight between Walter and Zen, which is basically Dragon Ball Z levels of awesome that I was like, I'm here for it. And then you have a heart-wrenching one like with Luciola and Shara. It just, oh man, it was so good. Now, what I also liked about the game is that many of the characters from the previous game return as well, such as Nile, Dorothy, of course the leaders of the different branches in the cities. And it was just cool getting to revisit some of those areas, but not also that, but catch up with some of those characters. Even what I thought was really cool is when you go back and revisit your hometown in the game and you talk to the little kids that were running around and playing games and stuff. If you talk to them, they actually will bring up things that you did in the first game, and I'm like, this is cool, right? Like, it's just a way to add some kind of continuity to the games, and it made it feel more lived in, like there was stuff, like the stuff that I did in the first game actually mattered. But something else I really enjoyed was just, because one of my gripes about the first game was I felt like I didn't get enough time with a lot of the characters of my party. But this time around, I got so much time with all the characters in my party, because you can swap characters in and out of your party at any time, that I was like, I get to hang out with the characters I really want to know more about, or I get to hang out with some of my favorites. And Olivier kind of became a staple in my party. He just, anytime he opened his mouth, it was something goofy and off the wall that I was like, I would love to have an anime where you follow Olivier around and he just says goofy stuff all the time, because he's hilarious. I like him. But I like getting to learn more about Shara and kind of how she takes on this older sister role to Estelle, and see her really care for Estelle and try to be the wise older sister who has a bit of a drinking problem, but I guess we don't talk about that. But I also love seeing the relationship between Tita and Agate kind of developed, as they're like the brother and sister sort of thing where they care for each other. And it was cool to see Tita kind of come out of her shell a little bit and become more bold and strong because of her strength that she sees in Agate, and it just feeds off each other. And it's a really cool dynamic seeing them play together. And of course seeing Zen again, who's one of my favorites. Father Kevin always coming in every now and then just doing his thing. It was cool. I really like that. And what I liked even about this game, and this, you saw this in the first game too, but I feel like you saw it even more in the second game, how if you did the side quest, it would develop these little short stories, things almost like skits at times, kind of like the Tales of games, how you can hit the prompt and it'll give you some skits from those games. The side quest would, as you complete them, it would take your characters on different journeys and it would do different things, and some might be fetch quests, some might be go take down a monster, it could be a couple different things. Or it could be finding ingredients for a pill that if you take all the doses, you become immune to alcohol, so you can drink as much as you want, which that actually became a very hilarious scene at the end, because Olivier didn't take enough dosages and then he got sick, and then Shara just laughed at him. It was funny. But that's what I loved about it, is like, as you did the side quests, you got more of the characters. You got to see them just, their personalities really shine through the game, and you have these sweet little moments. Like, I remember one distinctly where you're finding this recipe for this old man in one of the cafes, and as you do that, you see him reconnect with kind of a long lost love, and you get to see some like funny banter between the two. And it just, I don't know, to me the side quests in this game really felt more impactful. It felt like you were really accomplishing something, and you got to see these little stories, these little vignettes, so to speak, play out that were just really, really well done, in my opinion. And what was cool about some of these side quests is it would bring you back to some of the characters you met in the first game, and so you get to continue those interactions, and in some ways it would help you out a little bit. I remember we were trying to get the Arsail back up and running, and we needed some like fuel or something like that, and so you go talk to one of the mechanics in, was it Grancel? I think it's Grancel, the one that's super technologically advanced as a tower, and she would just provide you the stuff, and it might have been a little minor thing that was probably nothing really to talk about, but to me it felt cool, because again, it continued those threads that began in the first game and wove them even tighter and stronger in the second game. I kind of, at this point, I'd like to address something I brought up in my review of the first game. I knocked the first game because of the glacial pacing, right? Understanding that Falcom was trying to get you attached to the characters so that when the plot picked up, you'd be invested. And I had previously said that I wish it had sped things up a bit. And to a degree, I still kind of wish that they had done that. But as I played through the second chapter, I was like, I don't know how they could have really done it any differently, because Trails in the Sky first chapter gets you so invested in the characters that as you're playing through second chapter, you find, at least I did. I found myself audibly reacting to different moments, from Ren's surprise betrayal, like I mentioned earlier in the video, to Colonel Richard, or former Colonel Richard, his redemption and surprise aid at the end of the game, how he comes in and helps the team out when the enforcers are attacking the castle and trying to kidnap the queen. It was a cool moment, because I remember when Richard showed up, I was like, oh dude, let's go, yes. And then him and his second in command was there, and I was just like, dude, this is so cool to see these characters. It was cool to see them redeem themselves in this way, and it just, yeah, I don't know how they could have done it any differently. And so again, I want to thank those of you that wrote comments in the last video, because I think some of y'all got me to think through some things and helped me understand, like, okay, this is what first chapter was trying to do. I get it now. I appreciate it a little bit more. So again, thank you for leaving comments in the previous video. Kind of going along with the theme of audibly reacting to the thing, I remember at the end of the game when Weissman kind of makes it known that he molded Joshua's brain, and he has this almost like control over him, kind of like how Hydra had control over the Winter Soldier in the Captain America movies, and he had different commands and stuff. And there's this heartbreaking moment where it seems like Joshua is going to kill Estelle, and you're like, oh no, like, is this going to happen? Like, what's happening right now? Why are they putting me through this? Because I hadn't played the other games, I hadn't really looked up the other games, I hadn't looked into any spoilers or anything, so I'm like, Estelle could die here. I don't know, because who knows? Maybe the folks over at Falcom are like Brandon Sanderson, and they're not afraid to kill a character off because that's just how they roll. Man, it was just really that whole end game when you're on the Oriole that was just really stressful, because after you defeat Weissman, which really cool ending boss fight, kind of gave me Sephiroth vibes at the end of Final Fantasy VII. The tower's falling apart and falling out of the sky. It really makes you think that Estelle and Joshua are going to die, and I'm like, man, like, I don't know. This game, the storytelling's just top notch. Like, it's really, really good, and it got me invested, and it got me intrigued to the point where I was hooked on this game. Even when Elden Ring came out, I was like, no, I've got to finish this game. I've got to keep playing. I got to find out what happens next. And it just, man, Trails in the Sky second chapter, it's really, really good. Now, I didn't really talk about the gameplay a whole lot, because honestly, for the most part, the combat is the same as the first game, with a few minor changes added in, like you can upgrade your orbital slots now and make those spells and moves a little bit more powerful, and you have these tag team attack crafts now that you can do, where you can team up with, I think you can team up with everybody in your party at once to do one big attack where they all attack one after the other, kind of like Ninja Turtle style, right? Which honestly I didn't really use a whole lot, because I found myself just not really needing to. It's not that I didn't like them per se, I just thought it was more beneficial to just have each character attack separately and apply different status effects and then go from there. Now, I will also mention that I did play through the game on easy, which I was super glad they had difficulty settings, because like I said in my previous review, I hated the amount of difficulty spikes in the first game. So just having the option there for different difficulty settings, whether it's easy, normal, or hard, I greatly welcomed that. I was like, yes, let's go. And so really, all in all, I greatly enjoyed Trails in the Sky second chapter, so much so that I went ahead and bought the other games in the Trails series, and I'm actually about 6 to 7 hours into Trails in the Sky the third right now. I already started it because I was like, after I finished second chapter, I was like, let's see what the third is like. I'm not gonna say a whole lot about the third right now, because I don't want to spoil that here in this video. I will say that at least 6 to 7 hours into the game, I am enjoying it. A lot of folks who commented on my last video mentioned, hey, if you play this, just know it's different. It's a bit of a departure from the road that you're used to in the previous games, and I noticed that right away, and I have to say, I actually kind of like the change in the gameplay a little bit and kind of how it's telling the story, because it just feels fresh and new, and it's not nearly as bad or weird as I thought it would be. This is actually a pretty cool way to go with the story, and plus having Father Kevin as the center stage character, at least at the beginning, was a welcome addition, because again, Father Kevin is the GOAT. Which, by the way, now that I think about it, Father Kevin was a really cool character, especially at the end when you find out he's like this heretic hunter for the Septian Church, and he's kind of this, almost like a black sheep of the church thing. Kind of his role is frowned upon by some people, and people don't really look too highly on kind of what he's doing, but it's just this cool vagabond kind of role that he has, that it just made me more curious about the character, and that's also why I started up Trails in the Sky the third so quickly. Now, I'll admit, I had no idea what I was getting into when I started these Trails in the Sky games. And while I'm not really ready to say at this moment if they're better than Persona or Final Fantasy, I will still happily put them up there alongside those games. Trails in the Sky second chapter was an amazing game. It was a thrill ride that just kept going and going and going, and man, it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And so as I close out this review, I want to say thanks again to everyone who commented on my review of the first game, because again, a lot of those comments helped me think through some of the different perspectives that I hadn't considered previously, and kind of gave me some good tips on playing second chapter but also some things to look forward to in Trails in the Sky the Third. And so I'd actually love to hang out with some of you, so feel free to stop by the TRG Discord, especially with Trails from Zero getting localized and coming stateside this September. There's a lot to talk about leading up to that. And also there's apparently a Trails anime coming, supposedly. I guess now's a good time to get into the Trails series. And so thanks for watching this video. If you're a Trails fan, sound off in the comments with some of your favorite things about Trails in the Sky second chapter, whether it's a favorite character or moment. But I look forward to interacting with you, and I try to reply to every comment. Yes, even the trolls. And so with that being said, it's off to Trails in the Sky the Third. Like I said, I'm 7 hours into that one, and so I'm looking forward to putting more time into that. I just finished Elden Ring, so I'll be working on a video for that, hopefully coming up in the next couple weeks, and so be looking forward to that. But hey, if you like this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. We do podcasts every other week and news roundups every Friday. So be a deer, keep it locked here. I'll see you in the next video. In a remote mountain. Wow, I can't talk. And redeem themselves and redeem.